well, yes, you can. You're like, yeah, no, I couldn't. Or you're like, well, maybe I could, and that's why you're here. Maybe. I'm wondering if there's ever been like an issue where you live or like in your school, and like the problem or the solution was like so glaringly clear and nobody was doing anything about it. And you're like, maybe you're even tempted to like do something about it yourself. You're like, no, I could never. All right. Today I want you guys to consider, what if you could? Like, think of sports, right? Say we're all at the game, we're in the stands, we're cheering, or we're jeering. But what if we could be on the field? Hands on the ball, advancing the ball. What if we score? I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. Today I want to cover ways that you can actually get involved, how you can actually get on the ballot, and how you can actually win an election. Bringing all this to fruition depends entirely on you, and like your passion, and your patience, and your persistence, and also there's math. Warning. Of course, I went to the sports analogy first because I teach English here at Brookdale. My name's Dina Long. I'm in the Department of English and College Success in the Institute of Business, Humanities, and Social Sciences. We just had a rename, so I had to read that to make sure I got it right. But I've been a member of the faculty since 2006. Now, when I first got hired at Brookdale, if you asked me what my life would be like in 20 years, I would have said, I hope to be publishing, right? Lots of works that bring magic to the mundane with my creative nonfiction. Instead, I spent my free time as an elected official in my town of Seabright. 3 3-year terms on the Borough Council and 2 4-year terms as mayor of the town. And the notable thing about my time as mayor at Seabright is it happened during the absolute devastation of Superstorm Sandy. I don't know if you guys remember that. In Seabright, it was pretty bad. But we also had a pretty spectacular recovery in Seabright, and that was all on my watch. But somehow, 17 years slipped by, whoops, and I realized it was time for me to take a beat and retire from election politics for a while. I need to rediscover that magic in the mundane, if you will. But in the meantime, I want to take what I learned to help build up the next generation of leaders who will run for these positions someday. Who's in? All right. So let's talk about ways to get involved, right? You could run for school board, right? School boards have important roles in the community, make the decisions about who gets hired, how much they get paid, what students are studying, how the money gets spent, right? How about your town? You got a town council. Maybe you want to run for mayor. Maybe you want to do something in the county. You want to be a county commissioner. Maybe you want to run for state legislature. I don't know. But when you pick what you want to run for, be aware that there's restrictions on terms, right? They're for certain numbers of years, so you want to make sure there's an opening for the thing that you're running for, right? And there's sometimes residency restrictions, like you have to live in a certain place or so. You have to check and make sure what all those restrictions are when you pick where you want to serve. Throwing a caution right out the gate, though. Once you pick what you want to run for, it's super important to know what you're getting yourself into. So I highly suggest that you go to a meeting or 2. This is what you're going to be doing 2 Tuesdays a month for the next 3 years or more, right? So make sure you know what you're getting yourself in for. If you don't want to go to a meeting, most towns and school districts have their meetings online, so you could just listen online. Sometimes you can watch it. You know, some towns show it on FiOS cable, right? You can watch their meetings. So check it out. And maybe if you think, okay, maybe someday, but I'm not ready yet, towns and school boards have appointed positions. You could try to get appointed to a local board, like an environmental commission, a planning and zoning board, advisory group within a school district, where you just kind of get the flavor of how it works before you dive in with both feet. Just saying. So, okay, you're going for it. I'm going to assume you're going for it. So step one is to get yourself on the ballot, right? So how it works is this. You have to get a petition, which is given by the county clerk, and you obtain signatures of qualified people, right? And you submit it to the clerk by a certain deadline. So I put here for a county and school board, like say you want to run for county commissioner, right? You file with the Monmouth County Clerk, and you have to do it on the 71st day before the primary election, and you need 300 signatures. But if you want to run for school board, right, you need 25 signatures, and you get it to the Monmouth County Clerk by 4 o'clock on the last Monday in July. Okay? Let me move on for municipal offices, right? Council, mayor, etc. Right? You do that with your town clerk. They call it the municipal clerk. If you're running as a Republican or a Democrat, I call that partisan offices. You have to run in the primary election. So you have to get your petition to your clerk by the deadline for the primary election. It's this arbitrary date, 71 days before. I don't know where it comes from, right? But if you win your primary, then you go on to be the candidate in the general election for that party. Everybody with me so far? All right, so they changed the law. So there's different requirements for how many signatures you need based on how big your town is. So I'm showing the list here, like 50,000 residents, you need 100 signatures. 2,500 residents or fewer, you need 5 signatures or 5% of that party's vote, whichever is lower. Right, so there's a little bit of math involved. Right? But partisan elections, running as a Republican, running as a Democrat in the primary, that means that you have to deal with party politics. Sorry. Right? They may have an idea of who they want on the ballot. Maybe they'll ask you to wait. Maybe they'll find you someplace else to run. But if you're interested and you're a member of the party, you got to work in your party. So you approach the person who's in charge of your party, tell them your interest, get to know the people. Maybe you don't like who's running for your party and you want to throw them a challenge. So now you got a network for all those voters in your party so that you could be successful. Now, some of us, meaning me, are not a Republican or a Democrat. We're what you call unaffiliated. Sometimes they call us independents, right? It's harder to run as an independent because you don't have that party backing you and working for you, but it's possible. Hi, standing here with a flag pin on, right? So if you are an independent, you don't play in the primary, right? You skip straight to the general election. You have to get a petition with signatures, and you file yours on primary day. Everybody, all the partisans are voting, you turn in your signature on primary day. And if you're an independent, you need at least 2% of legally qualified voters who voted in the last General Assembly election. So the clerk for your town will tell you how many signatures it is. Right? It could be a dozen, it could be 24, but they'll tell you how many signatures you need to actually get on the ballot. I took the liberty of making a nice little QR code. If you're interested, this brings you to the website for the Monmouth County Clerk, where you can get information on nominating petitions. just in case anyone wants to grab that QR code. Ready to move on? Awesome. So now let's talk about the strategy part, right? You got yourself on the ballot because you had a successful petition. One thing I didn't mention about petitions, when you have people sign your petition, make sure they sign with the name that they use on their voter registration. Very important, right? Same name, same signature when they sign your petition. Forgot to say that. Okay, you're successful in your petition. This next part is kind of important because you need to think about what the election looks like for you, right? Meaning, how many voters are there in your town or district? And you want to make sure we have active voters, because there's like thousands of names on the voter rolls, but not all of them are actually active voters. Like, there's people on there who just haven't been purged and whatever. So we want active voters, right, to figure out what the potential vote pool is. And it helps to know the partisan breakdown. So if you're a Democrat, then will the Democrats likely vote for you? If you're a Republican, will the Republicans likely vote for you? Like, what is that going to look like for your election? And you're like, I don't know. How do I find out? It's pretty simple. You get the voter list. You can actually get the list of registered voters in your town or your district from the clerk, the Monmouth County clerk. It's actually legally available, especially to candidates. You can get it for free if you send it by email, but if you want it printed out, there's a charge. They'll do mailing labels for you. There's a charge for that. They might ask you to fill out a Freedom of Information Act document where you say what you want and sign, but you can get the voter list. Oh, here, QR code, voter list, right, in Monmouth County, so that you can get an idea of what your voting universe looks like. This next part is the secret sauce. This is the part that candidates literally pay consultants thousands of dollars to figure out: the vote goal. This is how you win an election. What's a vote goal? How many votes you need to win this thing. Winning an election is 50% plus 1, or however many you need to feel comfortable that you have a victory cushion. 1 was never enough for me. I was usually like 50% plus 20 because I wanted to be sure I had it in the bag, right? So, but that is how so you have your pool of voters, right? What's 50% plus your cushion? Caution flag, math. Yeah, there's math involved in this part, because you literally get out the list and you start checking off the people that you know or who are likely to vote for you because of what you did in your town or in your school, your sports, your rec, your church. Like, how many people do you know out here? How many people do your friends know? Let's count them up. Like, what's that number look like? Once you have that voter list, if you have Excel skills, you can sort it, right? So you can sort it by neighborhood, so you can see where everybody lives. You can sort it by age, so you can find all the voters who are in your age group. You know which ones are the seniors, right? So we kind of figure out, how many votes do I need and where am I going to get them from? Which leads me to campaigning, right? When you go out campaigning, or when you think about a campaign for office, it's easy to get distracted by social media, swag, bells and whistles, but it's super important to stay focused on the goal of a campaign, which is getting votes, right? Meeting the people and getting their votes. So let's keep in mind what we know about communication 101. I know you guys had it, especially even if you had English. You talked about knowing your audience, right? So we need audience awareness when we think about a campaign strategy, right? Like, what are the neighborhoods? What are the issues, potential issues in the neighborhoods, right? Or the districts or the wards? And think about what are going to be the best ways to reach each group of voters that you identified, right? Are they young people? You know, are they going to respond to the short videos, do a little Insta, a little TikTok, right? Are they like Gen X boomer types, so you got to get to them on Facebook, right? Are they seniors, old school letter, maybe personalized, right? Think about what are going to be the best ways to reach each group. Ding dong. Hi, my name's Dina. I'm running for council in Seabright. I'd like to talk a little bit about what I stand for and hear what your concerns are for our community. We call that door to door, right? So I'm talking about tactics, right? Ways to reach voters. People think you need so much money to like run for office, but actually you kind of don't. There's so much that you could do for free, right? Like go to town events, show up, hi. Maybe you got a button, maybe you're handing out flyers, right? Do what they call a meet and greet, where you have a neighbor who's really popular with a nice backyard, invites their neighbors over to come meet you and see what you're all about, right? Do a walk and talk, where you kind of advertise and invite people to walk through the neighborhood with you, right? Make a webpage. You can do that for free, right? A little Substack. Ding dong. Hi, my name's Dina. That's free too, right? So there's like a lot that you could actually do for free for campaigning. And then, you know, there's the do-it-yourself stuff. You can save money by making your own flyers or brochures, making a mailer or a postcard. I don't have to tell you that like there's awesome tools, right, out there for free to make things look professional, right? So you could also do that for kind of low cost, but oh no, caution flag, more math, right? I'm talking about things that cost money, right? So yeah, it's low cost, but if you need a mailer, you need money to pay for that mailer because you got to pay for all those sheets of paper and you need the postage, right? And if you're smart, one thing that I always do with a voter list is there might be like 4 people registered to vote in one house. So like instead of sending 4 letters, we send 1 letter. So like you kind of sort it by the household and group everybody together. Usually you can cut the list at least in half, you know, to kind of save money, but it equals money, right? So be aware that, you know, you're gonna need money if you do things that cost money. And then other things that cost money are like signs, right? You drive up and down Newman Springs Road. Whoa, what are they? You know, you notice the first one, maybe you notice the second one, but now it's like sign soup, right? Do you notice them? Do you register them? Yeah. So I know that signs can be effective in giving the perception of support. So the first time I ran for mayor, my neighbor across the street, he put up a sign for my opponent. And I swear every day when I came home from work or pulled out my driveway, I'm grumbling. Like, we're neighbors, I can need some water. And I remember wailing to my husband, I need more signs. Yeah, I wanted a landslide. Like, I didn't need more signs. It just got in my head. So I feel like signs are more psychology because the rule is signs don't vote. People vote, right? So we stay focused on the goal. Meet people, get their vote, right? All right, so this is like I'm talking about money, budgets. Let me just briefly cover the red tape, the legal stuff, right? Super important. You need to budget. In other words, plan ahead for how much is this going to cost me? How much will that mailer cost? I need a we call it campaign budget. Write down the cost of that postage, the cost of those papers, right? The cost if you want signs, how much are they going to cost? You want some swag, pens with your name on it, I don't know, pot holders. I don't know why I said that, but you know what I mean, right? How much is all that going to cost? if somebody has a party for you and they spend money, like hospitality, like, unless they're, there might be some costs involved, right? So you need a campaign budget so that you can plan ahead for your costs. Why is this important? Because there's red tape. Yeah, there's the man shows up. Everybody running for office has to file with the New Jersey Election Law Enforcement Commission. We call it ELEC for short, once you get used to it. And there's spending limits. So if you're one person running for office and you're going to spend $6,900 or less, there's one form you have to file. It's called an A1. Super simple. File it. Make a promise you're not spending more than that amount of money, and you're done. If you want to spend more than $6,900, right, there's a different form you have to file with ELEC, and that means you need to set up a bank account, right? And if you set up a bank account, you need a treasurer, right? And there's a different form you have to file. And then ELEC wants you to report who your money's coming from, your contributions, and they want you to report your disbursements, how you're spending your money because you're running a larger campaign, right? It's not hard, right? You just, need good help. And hopefully somebody who's good at math, right? But importantly, right, if you're raising money, do not take cash. This is a recipe for trouble. You want a paper trail for everything. So, QR code, ELEC information, right, for candidates, if anybody wants it. All right, I covered spending limits. Good? All right, so finally, I ran 5 elections myself. Right? As a young person right out of college, I also worked for 2 New Jersey governors and 2 United States Senate campaigns. So I learned a few things along the way about what works and doesn't work. So I just want to share a couple thoughts, starting with what doesn't work. Right? If you don't do anything, like you put yourself out on the ballot and that's it, you're like, see what happens. You're not going to win. Right, I'm sorry, unless it's a miracle, the other person implodes in personal scandal, I don't know, but if you don't do anything, you're probably not gonna win, right? The second thing that doesn't work is when you talk to people and you're all talk, blah, 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 all talk, no listen. Kind of like what I'm doing now. No, seriously, you don't want to be lecturing at your potential voters. You want to listen to them, right? So it doesn't work if you just say your spiel and don't open your ear. And then finally, being uninformed, right? You want to make sure you know what you're talking about when you go out there, start talking about the issues of your town, right? You don't look smart if you go around talking about sharing services if the town's already sharing those services. Right? In my town, you can't tell sailors about the tide, and you can't tell fishermen how to fish. It just, you got to be informed, right? So what does work, right? Learn your issues, right? Learn what the issues are. Be informed. People are like, oh, she knows her stuff, right? Yeah, right? Learn the process, how it works, how this election thing works, how meetings work, right? Also, people's names, right? If you meet someone, if they invite you in their living room to talk about issues, you should remember their name. So when you see them on the street, you're like, Linda, hey, right? It works. Also, follow up. If someone asks you a question and you're like, I don't know the answer to that, let me find out. Well, call them back and tell them the answer. You may not remember that they asked you the question, but they're completely going to remember that they asked you a question and you didn't follow up. Just saying. And then the calendar. There's deadlines, right? You have to get these petitions. You got to file these reports. There's deadlines for voter registration, right? Coming up. Right, there's deadlines for mail-in voting and early voting starts. So you want to be aware so that you can, not get caught up short. Oh, I don't have enough time to send my mailer, right? So you got to really mind that calendar. And then finally, don't forget the secret sauce, right? Keep a running tally of how many people are going to vote or are likely to vote for you, right? 50% plus 1, remember the goal. Right, and so we want to make sure that we have enough votes lined up so that we're at least competitive in this thing, right? So, and it's scalable. Whether we're talking about a community of 2,000 people or 10,000 people, the winning formula is the same. It's just math, right? So, in 20 minutes, pretty much, I managed to cover the process, right? Here's your path. Choose your step, right? Get yourself on the ballot with a nominating petition. Set your vote goal and figure out how you're going to get your votes. File your forms and pay attention to the deadline. It's not brain science. It just takes patience and persistence. And also math. For what it's worth, I feel like if I can do it, anyone can. I mean, so many times when I was mayor, some visiting dignitary, elected official, somebody from Washington or whatever, they'd roll up in Seabright and they'd walk over to the oldest white guy in the table and they'd be like, "Hello, Mayor." And I'd be like, "Hi, we're here." Right? But I did my time. I did my 17 years. I think it's your time. We desperately need good people committed to civil society, running these boards, these commissions, these lawmaking bodies. If it doesn't work out for you the first time, try again. Because now they know you. And now you know how it works, right? We need people who are willing to do more than just cheer or jeer from the sidelines. We need you actually in the game, if you know what I'm saying. Because, yeah, you actually can run for office. And we seriously hope that you do. Thank you. I'd be happy to take any questions that you have. I don't know how much time is left. Yes?
How many times did you actually go for being mayor? You have a lot of trial and error?
So I had a unique experience because I was on the town council for almost 9 years before I ran for mayor. So I kind of knew what I was getting myself into. And the mayor was actually my friend, and she got sick and she couldn't run for re-election. And she's like, "All right, Dina, I spent all this time teaching you everything. Now you have to run for mayor." And I was like, "But, I like being council, behind the scenes, doing research, writing up little plans and such." But I stepped right out front. She made me, and then I won. And then Sandy happened, and the rest is Googleable. So, any other questions? Yes, hi.
Do you recommend going to school board meetings? I apologize, I got in late. School board meetings, town council meetings, to find out the issues that will help you when you getting your information, meeting some people, and finding out about the process, because different towns and school boards may work a little bit differently, have different numbers of people. Would you recommend starting to go to those meetings?
100%.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I also recommended to look online, because many school boards and towns have their meetings, agendas, they have recordings, some have video, and so even if you can't travel, you could still find out what's going on to be informed.
Thank you.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes, hi.
Hey, Dana, Tom from Political Science. I was wondering if you might want to share, or could you share a little bit, since you did so many years in local government, as a poli-sci guy, look, we know local politics can get nasty. Recollections, thoughts, ways to avoid that, ways to deal with it?
So I want to be completely honest. I didn't do a good job there. Meaning, it's brutal. People talk smack about you and your family, and they lie about you and things that you said. And they make funny memes of you and put them on the internet that your children find. And like, it's kind of nasty. You know, I feel like you guys who grew up with the social media, you're a little better at like, brushing it off. So I pretended like I didn't know it existed. I pretended like I didn't see it. And I saw all of it. And it made me pretty, like, it got dark for me. So that after 2 terms, I was like, I need out. And that's the truth of it. I think if I'd have done a better job of separating and, you know, as they say, like, don't read the comments. Yeah, don't read the comments. That's my advice. Do what you think is right? And surround yourself with support. I mistakenly felt that I was obligated to listen to everybody, you know, because they're all like voters and like whatever. And you actually get to choose who you listen to, right? It's a fundamental right as a person in a civil society. You don't have to stand there and let somebody yell at you, right? I just did. So that's super honest. Maybe that was maybe it was more honest than you were looking for. But
people need to know that about
yeah.
it. You know, as you said, scaling it up. You know, you move into a larger universe of, say, state legislator,
Right.
You know, county official, Congress. A lot of that noise kind of it just dissipates because
Sure.
there's just so much of it. But at the local level,
The bigger the the bigger the platform, the bigger the target, right? So after Sandy, all the news reporters rolled up in Seabright. Like, why? Because we had very good photos of storm damage, so it like made good TV for. And I think they also like it was novel, right? Like, oh look at that, that's the girl. Look at that girl mayor over there, right? So like, we had a lot of like news coverage in Seabright in the beginning, and I think that caused, like, you know, like people to think that I was seeking spotlight for myself instead of the town, right? And so like I brought some of that on myself by putting myself out there, right? And I learned in the recovery and healing process, PS, if you have unresolved trauma, right, you need to deal with that to be equipped to handle the fire hose of negativity. Right, I just learned that after the fact. So, afterthoughts, right? Yeah.
So, hi. I was just wondering, systemically, whether it's how people self-decide to get into office, or whether it's the process of who gets elected, or whether it's how meetings and decisions are made. What do you have ideas now, and have been in it so long? Systemically, what could make local government operationally be stronger for the residents they serve?
I'm not sure. I have, you know, I have thoughts about, you know, municipal consolidation, et cetera, and so forth. But I think my concern is we need candidates. It's time for the next generation to step up and join us at the table, because people have been in office for decades. Right? So we need some help writing this future for the people who are going to live it, right? Not the people who are going to die off and leave it. So I've kind of shifted my focus from the government side to the grassroots, let's grow new leaders, you know, and bloom where we're planted side.
I'm Joshua Matchin. I'm a student at Brookdale here. I'm just wondering, for like young kids like us, do you have any advice for us to go through adversity with our age? Because we might look a little younger, a lot of people wouldn't take us seriously.
You have to be so prepared. So speaking of people not taking you seriously because you're young, you know, I mentioned they always thought like the old white guy was the mayor, and I'd be like, so you have to prepare extra. right? You gotta like really, because people are already doubting you. They took one look at you and decided that you don't know, right? So you have to prove that you know, right? So I think what do say, knowledge is power, right? So do your homework. I should maybe call it a different name. Do your research. Do your own research, as they say. So I don't know if that's helpful. But also, don't be afraid of public speaking, right? When I was your age, I was the one who sat in the back, and if the professor called on me, my face turned all red, right? So it's just practice. It's literally just practice. And you'll always be nervous, right? I was like having little shakies walking in here this morning. Like, I think if you're not nervous, there's something wrong with you, right? But practice, like you can, you get used to it. So like it's part of it. So don't be afraid to speak and do your research. My best advice for debates. So you have to figure out what works for you. You need to take that beat before you speak. So you have a second to process. If in real time, it feels like it's taking a long time, or like in your mind, it feels like it's taking a long time because you're like, I'm waiting too long to answer. But in real time, it's just a couple of seconds. It's okay, right? So I held many town hall meetings after Sandy, and the residents would just come up and like vent about this or that or this or that. And so I developed a trick where I literally rolled up my tongue in my mouth so that speaking was a conscious act. And I could be thoughtful about the next word that came out of my mouth because people were raw and emotional, and it was a crazy time. And so I wanted to be super careful about my speech. So I developed my own hack to kind of take that beat. So in a debate, you have to figure out how to take that beat, to just give your mind that second to compose, right? Get that first word out right. Mm-hmm.
I just have one more thing for you, Dina. Just
Yeah.
really more for,
Yeah.
especially the young students in the room. When you first ran for council, for lack of better words, did you have to pay your dues first? Let's say, going to like local Democratic club meetings or Republican club meetings, or what were the possibilities of, say, running as an independent candidate?
Mm-hmm.
Was there even a path to win that way, or did you have to kind of, pardon the cliche, hitch your wagon to one of the established parties? Could you just speak to that a bit?
Yeah, I came in through the partisan door. I was a Democrat when I first started in my local politics. So when I expressed my interest in running for a vacant council seat, I was invited to start coming to meetings, right? And they'd call them like kitchen table meetings at the woman who became mayor's house, where literally every other week we went through the agenda of like all the things that were going on in the town, and they made sure that I was up to speed and that I would vote correctly should I get that seat. But at some point after my second election, after I became mayor, I left the Democrat Party because I made the unforgivable sin of crossing party lines to endorse a Republican. I was expected to endorse the Democrat who I had never seen, heard her voice, whatever. And there was a Republican governor who gave me the cell phone number and was like, text me if you have a problem. Like, how can I not support the Republican? I mean, come on. Yeah, so that was unforgivable to the Democrats to support a Republican. So I kind of just washed my hands of the party politics and became an unaffiliated independent. And then that suited me because neither party is really speaking to where I'm at right now. I'm purple, right? So it suits me to be independent. And I'm very frustrated that the system is stacked against independent candidates. I mean, if you look at the ballot, there might be an independent candidate on it for you this November. You have the Republicans in the first column. You got the Democrats in the second column, and the independents are like all the way over here in like column G, if you even look over here to see them, you know. So it's challenging if you run as an independent, for sure.
My follow-up question is that if you had started, let's say, back in your days when you first ran for committee, I mean for council, if you had not aligned or gone to these kitchen table meetings, you know, I don't know to be candid here, but do you think you would even have a chance?
I do, just because independent really appeals to the voters where I live. You know, it's kind of a wacky place, Seabright, and everybody thinks of themselves as like this rugged independent, right? So when you say you're independent, they're like, yeah. And then I was like, oh, they like this, that I'm not a member of any party. I did better as an independent than I did as a party member. All right, guys, that was awesome. Thank you so much. You can find me in Larison Hall, room 233, in my office, dlong@brookdalecc.edu. And when it's your time, look me up. I'd be happy to be a resource for you.